The gas tank is full, your bags are packed, and your four-legged companion looks at you with the "can I go too" face. If you give in, planning ahead is key to a safe and enjoyable trip. Dr. Sally Foote with the Okaw Veterinary Clinic joins us for this episode of the Paw Report to talk all things related to pet travel. So stay with us. Production of the Paw Report is brought to you by
Dave's Decorating Center is a proud supporter of the Paw Report on WEIU. Dave's Decorating Center features the Mohawk Smart Strand Silk Forever Clean Carpet. Dave's Decorating Center, authorized Mohawk Color Center in Charleston.
Okaw Vet Clinic in Tuscola and Dr. Sally Foote remind you to properly take care of your pets and are happy to help support the Paw Report on WEIU. Okaw Vet Clinic located at 140 West Sales Street in downtown Tuscola. More information available at okawvetclinic.com.
Dr. Sally Foote joins us, and of course with our favorite friend Ranger, who's staring at me and who's roaming the studio as we speak. Thank you so much for joining us. We love seeing Ranger every time you guys visit us.
Yep.
And we are talking about all things pet travel. You know, families and their four-legged friends travel all year long, and I think it's a great topic to bring up on this episode. Is it a good idea to take your pet, somebody like Ranger, on vacation with you?
It can be. The first thing is that whether or not it's good to bring your pet is, you know, how long are you going to travel for? What route are you taking, a plane, or are you, traveling by car, and how well does your pet do in those kind of travel ways? And then where are you going to? Are you going to be staying in a hotel? Are you going to be staying in a family's home? And does that other family's home have another pet themselves? And how well do those pets get along? So those are all the things to kind of consider as you consider which would be best for us and for our pet.
And a lot of times we just think of ourselves first and foremost.
Yeah.
And our dogs and cats sometimes come second, which they shouldn't. But you mentioned car, so let's start with car travel. How can you acclimate your dog or cat to long car rides? I mean, it's something that you shouldn't just open up the car door and plop them in.
Right. So the first thing is, if you have a puppy or a kitten, you want to take them on a lot of car rides, and you want to set up that car ride to be safe for the pet and safe for you. So what that means is, yes, get that puppy one of those like safety harnesses that hooks to your safety belt in the back seat of the car. Enforce that the puppy should stay in the back seat of the car, and you make it nice for them. You may have like a couple treats you toss back there, and when I say treats, I'm talking like this for Ranger. We took one and we broke it up in a tiny little piece because we don't want them to eat a lot of food. They may get sick on that. But you're going to make it fun, and you're going to do fun trips. You're going to put them in the car when you go to the bank. You're going to go to the post office, and just these trips, so it's not always to the vet. Because if you only take them in the car to the vet, then they associate things like, oh my gosh, I'm getting a shot, or maybe they were sick and they were painful, and they remember that about the car, and that's why they don't like the car. Right. So setting it up to be nice as a puppy if you already have an adult pet, and if they don't like riding in the car, then there's ways that you can, first of all, taking short trips. Second of all, use some products that can decrease their anxiety about getting in the car and riding in the car. I think carriers, like the regular, hard shell case like carriers, are really good for small dogs and cats to travel in, because if you ever get in a car accident, it will protect your pet. And I've seen that happen because I'm near the Pasodum State Police, office there in Tuscola, where there have been major accidents on the interstates, and the dog was, say, loose in the car, not secured in any way or anything, and they took off out of the car and then were lost. Or the animal got injured badly because they were thrown in the car as well. So these are things we don't always think about, but it is really important, because we want to think about pet safety. And lastly, we don't want like the cat that gets under the brake pedal. And I've heard those stories, as you're driving in the car, or the dog who now is sitting right here in your lap, as you're driving with the steering wheel, and might be licking on your face, etc., distracting you as a driver. Well, you see a lot of that.
I see a lot of that.
But that is not safe, and it's not. You're training the dog to allow to lay like that. You see, And so that's not, you can train the dog to be happy laying in the seat next to you, secured, like I said, to the safety belt, or you can train the dog to be happy in its carrier, in the car. They're not going to feel unloved. And it's like your kids in the car seat, right? You're safe and sound. I'm safe and sound. My mind's on driving. Playtime will come when we get to the park or we get where we're going.
Well, let's say you do all of that, but your animal still is anxious. Are sedatives? Is that something that you would say is an okay thing, or maybe not so much?
Everything, like how a pet learns how to be, what they associate with, say, riding in the car, is all related to how do they feel. So if they're really anxious and we can't, and they won't become less anxious, say with something like a treat, then they're anxious enough, yes, they do need help. And where sedatives, you have to get them, if they're panting, pacing, say vomiting, howling or yowling, that's a very highly anxious state. So yes, you do need to talk to your veterinarian about a sedative or sedative combination to give them for travel. Because what's happening in their body is, it's just like you or me, their heart rate is racing, their intestinal tract is churning. I've seen pets overheat because of the pacing and the panting. So yes, sedatives are good. Now, if we're working on, say, training them a little bit before the big trip, really helping them learn to kind of like the car, we can use, besides or instead of sedatives, we can use some anti-anxiety medication, or they do have products like, this is an actual calming supplement that can be given, and it's actually a amino acid kind of combination with a milk calming protein in it as a treat. And you can give this to your dog or your cat like an hour before you start driving in the car for like those short trips to help them learn to like it. Lastly, you can use products like, this is a pheromone spray for dogs, and there's one here for cats, somewhere in my little goodie bag.
Can't forget your goodie bag.
Yeah, okay, so the specific dog appeasing pheromone is very good for the dogs, and the facial pheromone product, I know I can't really name trade names here on PBS, but anyway, these are the best ones. Lavender has also been shown to help dogs settle a lot during travel. So now the like diffusers you can put in your car. We do not want to give that to them by mouth. We do not want to apply it to their skin. It's too strong. But that can be helpful. And lastly, even like the compression thunder shirt can help some of these. That works. That can work for some pets. So yes, if I have a really anxious pet and you're going to drive to Tennessee, you know, you've got an 8-hour drive ahead of you, this happens, or you're moving down to Florida or something, much better that, as I say, make them drunk and happy. You got a long ride in front of you. They're gonna breathe okay. They can still go to the bathroom when they need to. You can still walk them around at the rest stop, but they're just going to sleep. And that's much better for them than being anxious and pacing.
You brought a necessity bag with you today.
Yes.
For Ranger, who's taking a little snooze. I guess we're boring him.
Wake up, buddy. Everybody wants to see you.
But speaking of necessities, we should all pack, just like we pack our bags for our trip, for us humans.
Yes.
We need a necessity bag for our pets. What should we pack?
Well, if your pet is going to be, whether your pet is boarding somewhere or your pet is, you know, you're traveling with your pet, but especially if you're traveling with your pet, you should bring their own food and bring enough to last for your whole trip, plus maybe a little bit extra. Because what happens if your car breaks down or you have a delay in your trip, you know? And especially if your pet is on any kind of special diet. Because it's prescription diets, you know, a veterinarian in a different state may not be able to sell that to you if you run out because of our state laws with prescription laws, or they may not be able to call the clinic to get that prescription, you know, for some of these really specialty diets. So bring plenty on your trip. You're better to bring too much than possibly not enough. So food, their own like bedding or some kind of bedding thing from home, like a little blanket or something. I like it when clients have one of these, sorry, where are you? There you go. This is like a pet folder. So in this we have all the vaccination record, and there's even a pocket in there that you could put, say, the list of medications your pet is on, and it would have your veterinarian's name and phone number, etc. on there. All pets need to wear an identification collar. They have to have a collar or harness on that has your home phone number. I would put your cell phone number on this. Because when you're traveling, everybody's got their cell phones, and if your pet slips away from you somehow or in some way, and this happens, then if somebody finds a pet or he ends up at the shelter, they can call you and help you get your pet back with you.
Is it possible to get records from your vet's office to also stick in this little folder packet?
Yeah.
To make copies and have that
Sure.
with you?
Most all veterinary clinics are computerized, so they can quickly print off like a summary of, say, vaccination or what the health problems are, or maybe even medications. And all veterinary clinics will do that, for you as just a free service or whatever, for your pet. And I think it's essential. It's important.
We've talked a lot about car, but now let's switch over to some important reminders if you have to travel by air. And that can be scary for a pet owner, knowing that, some airlines, the pet can be with you, but in some cases not.
Right. So first of all, most of the small pets, dog or cat, under about 15 pounds or so, if they can fit in the carrier that can go underneath, the airline seat in front of you, then they can travel in the cabin with you. And that tends to be actually the best way for the pet to travel, because they can see you, you can see them, and so forth. Now, some bigger pets, or depending if you're on a smaller airplane, they'll have to go into cargo. Call plenty in advance to find out what the rules and regulations are for your pets to travel in cargo, because they cannot allow pets to travel when the air temperature is too cold outside or in flight, or too hot outside or in flight, or if the length of time of the flight is too long. They may require that your pet have sedation, because this prevents a lot of pets from getting upset in the carriers and trying to escape. And there are some airlines that might offer some additional services for the pet, like they may, if you're having to do a connecting flight, that they've got an area for relief for the pets, like to take the dogs out, and they might offer, and I don't know the particular airlines, but I've just heard of this, they might offer to allow your pet out to relieve themselves and back in, and some might not. So you need to call and gather all this information up, ahead of time.
Have you talked to some of your clients that have flown with animals and maybe the stress that it causes? What are some of the things that could happen if they're on a plane? Anxiety, I suppose, is one thing.
Right. So because they have to be in a carrier, they have to be in some kind of a containment, you really have to be sure that this dog or cat likes being in there. Not that they just tolerate it, because there's going to be noise, on the plane a little bit. There's going to be other people. You can't take your pet out like this, like Ranger, and just hold them in your lap. They're not going to allow that.
Right.
And so, like a cat like Ranger would have to be used to going in a carrier and laying there and be like, okay, this is fine.
Which he is.
Yeah, I know he is, because he travels a lot, and that's the point. So at home, what you do is you not only have that carrier out in the home, but you feed your cat in that carrier. The food doesn't go elsewhere in the kitchen and other places. You put it in the carrier, and you make games of and same thing for your dog. You toss the food in the carrier, and then you practice shutting the door so that they're in the carrier, closed up, and they get something to eat, so good things happen. And then you practice taking that carrier like in the car where there's loud noises and things like this or whatever. So they're very used to the carrier. Like the carrier itself is no big deal. Now, if they don't like, let's say if they're a dog or cat who's nervous around a lot of other people and things like this, then definitely they'll need some sedation to help them with travel, because you're going to have to be at that the terminal, whatever, the gate area, waiting to get on that flight with your pet in their carrier to go on board with you. Also, too, if they're going through any kind of cargo, they're going to be going through a lot of different people. They're not out of the carrier, but still, just people picking up and handling the carrier, a lot of noise, a lot of going down conveyor belts and things like this. So it's much better for them to be sedated.
Are certain breeds of animals, dogs, I guess in this case, cats too, prone to different travel problems? We mentioned before we started this interview talking about pugs. That breed might be, they might have a breathing issue.
Right. So breeds that have a pushed-in face. So that's going to be in dogs like your pug dogs, your boxer dogs, your English bulldogs, to name a few. Pekingeses are another. Then when a dog gets excited or anxious, they tend to pant. And while panting can release body heat to a point, then it's a lot of work and it creates body heat. And that's a part of how they can get overheated. And now they get in this vicious cycle of, now I'm hot, I gotta pant, and I'm nervous and I'm panting, and they can't get enough air in. They can't, because they have a pushed in face. So they're a higher risk for travel, especially say maybe by airline, and that's where actually if they're a little bit sedate, and I don't mean that they're anesthetized, but like I said, they're just kind of drunk, then they may just be like, oh, okay, I'll just lay here and rest instead of pacing and panting, and it actually can help a bit with their breathing. But it's a case-by-case thing, definitely something you need to discuss with your veterinarian long before you go on the trip. Please do not call 2 days before your trip. I get that sometimes. Where are you going on a trip? When are you leaving? Tomorrow? Okay.
Plan ahead.
Yeah, we haven't tried this med on your pet yet to see how well he tolerates it. Well, gosh, let's give a dose tonight and see how it goes. But, you know, please plan ahead. We don't always think about all these things, so that's why we're having this talk today, right?
That's right. Well, you can't take them in the car, and you've decided not to take them on the flight with you. So one option would be to board your dog or cat. I've done this, and they always went to a very good place, but it's scary, you know, especially when your animals are your children.
Right.
And a lot of pet owners, they sleep with their pets.
Yes.
So the thought
Ranger
of
is
them,
shedding.
Ranger is shedding. The thought of them going to a strange place is worrisome. So how can you take the fear out of a pet owner that will have to board their animal?
First thing I like to suggest to my clients is, you know, go to a boarding facility, walk through it, ask what their policies are, ask if they provide what I call a pet report card, which is just they will give you a little like report card day by day. How did they eat? How were their bowel movements? What was their attitude? And that's always nice because then you can see when you pick your pet up how they did, and you know they're really paying a lot of attention to them. But then the second thing is take your dog or even your cat to this place for just daycare for a day or two. Just take them there for one day, go shopping, go out to lunch for 2 or 3 hours, and then pick up your pet and ask, how did he do? So then you know, and they will usually tell you, did he eat or was he nervous? And number 2, this gives your pet a chance to get used to the place before being left for a longer period. And so that can really be helpful. Now, if you have a pet who tends to be really nervous, using some of the products I mentioned about, say, travel in the car can also be used at the boarding kennel. I have some clients where we send them off with, say, some of the supplement for their boarding days, and the boarding kennel will give it to them, and they know it just helps kind of take the nervousness off of them. And that's better for the pet, and it's better for the boarding facility, you know, as well, too. And that's what that is about, like the best way, you know, to go about doing it.
What other, you mentioned the report card, other questions that pet owners should ask? Should they be able to see where they're
Yes, they should. They should be able to walk through and see where they are and see where they're staying. And, you know, ask things like, do you have, say, extra playtime? And that might be an additional charge, but if they have, say, like a play yard where the dog can go out with a handler and then get playtime, that can be an excellent way to decrease boredom and problems with boarding. You know, there are some places, say, that board cats also have like a cat playroom, and they can have the cat in there. Ask about their policies for, you know, vaccination, et cetera, or warming. You know, all the animals are up to date on that. And thirdly, also ask them what is their policy, or most of them will be asking you this, who is your veterinarian, or what their policy is in the event of an emergency that your pet becomes ill while they're boarding. I mean, it can happen. And so where do they go? You know, are they going to, and that you are signing, say, a release to the boarding facility to be able to provide the necessary care for your pet while they're boarding. This is really important. I mean, it's kind of just like if you had to leave your children, you know, you had to go somewhere, and it's scary, yet if you did need to leave your children, you would want to make sure that you were signing some kind of a paper that authorized this caregiver to take your child to the doctor or the hospital if they got ill. Because without that, legally, I can't provide care on your behalf. You know, it's a whole relationship of who's bringing this animal in. So that's another, and again, for the boarding facility, have a copy of those records, have a copy of what the medications are, even if they're not currently taking them. It just makes everything a whole lot better.
You mentioned what if you have an emergency, and that brings me to my next question is, what if you do take Ranger with you to some other state?
Yeah.
And there is an emergency. I've known that to happen to people where their dog or cat gets sick. How would you know where to go and what to do? Do you just go to the vet that's there, or what's your best advice for that?
My best advice would be kind of like before you take your trip, scout out who are the veterinarians in the area, And, you know, yeah, I know it's a little bit hit or miss on just picking a veterinary clinic, but, you know, just look to see, usually a larger clinic, you know, who has the most hours. So that way, if you had a problem in the daytime, you'd have a place that's open. You might even just say, oh, this looks like a good clinic, call them ahead of time. And say, if I was traveling through, what's your policy? If I'm just traveling through and I had a problem with my pet and I needed to stop in for care, do you have what we call, say, urgent care appointments, you know, open for people to bring a pet in, you know, or is there an emergency clinic, say, for example, the University of Illinois emergency clinic room, it's open 24 hours a day. So if you had a daytime emergency, frankly, that would be the best place to go because you know they would be able to see your pet right then. Where in another clinic, if they're booked up, you know, the doctor might be out for a few hours in the afternoon, that could be a little hit or miss. So these days with Google, and you just sort of, like a triptych, go down your route, start saying emergency clinics in this area, and put it in your phone, whatever. Make a list for yourself, and then wherever you are geographically, you could say, let's check out there. If you were in between those points, most every veterinary clinic, if it's after hours, they're going to say whether they take emergency or what the emergency clinic is in their region that they're referring to. So if you called that, you would know. And again, you would bring in your record of, you know, what medications or history of, you know, your pet's health history.
That's right, your folder.
Your folder, thank you.
Well, as we wrap up our interview, you get to your destination and you get Ranger up to the hotel room all safe and sound. How can you acclimate Ranger to that new environment? Okay, now that you've made it safe.
We got our goodie bag. And we have his little blankie, and we have his food, and so we have all his things from home. And that's what we're going to have in that like hotel room, kind of in his own little corner. And we'll put his carrier nearby there so he can sleep in his carrier and be there. Now, you know, he could roam around the room, etc. But again, most hotels will require that if you are not in the room, that the animal needs to be in its carrier. So it's not doing any kind of damage, you know, in the room. So even if like you have to step out and go out to dinner, you might be able to leave the pet in the room that way. But that's one way to how to make it nice for them. You know, if you have to go up and down a stairway or up or down an elevator, take some treats with you, like with a dog, and reward them as you go, you know, in and out.
Some great advice. So thank you very much for joining us for this episode of the Paw Report. Fun and very informative. And Ranger, of course, we always enjoy seeing you.
Yes.
He's still not sure, but he's enjoying himself, I think. I think he's eyeballing the treats in their goodie bag. Thank you, Dr. Foote.
Well, thank you very much.
If you're a veterinarian, trainer, groomer, specialist, rescue organization, or shelter that would like to partner with the Paw Report by providing expert guests for the show, please contact us by emailing weiu@weiu.net or call 217-581-5956. If you have a topic you'd like to see on the show or questions for our experts, contact us with those too. For this Paw Report Extra, a well-known Wisconsin bovine has received a special birthday present. Lucy is a cow with 2 noses, and on her birthday, she gave birth to her 5th calf. The new calf weighed about 60 pounds when he was born. He has been named Stormy, named for the weather that hit the city of Merrill since he was born. Stormy has not inherited his mother's unique trait. He only has 1 nose. Have a video or photo of your pet doing something funny or absolutely adorable? We'd love to share it with our viewers here at the Paw Report. Email it to weiu@weiu.net and you could see it on our show. Just make sure it's video taken by you or that you have permission to share it. For more information about how to get that video or photo to us, email or call us at 217-581-5956. Did you know full episodes of the Paw Report are on YouTube? They can be accessed at youtube.com/WEIUTV. Then just go to the Paw Report playlist and select the episode you want to see. More information about the show is also available 24/7 on our website at WEIU.net under the television tab. Production of the Paw Report is brought to you by
Okaw Vet Clinic in Tuscola and Dr. Sally Foote remind you to properly take care of your pets and are happy to help support the Paw Report on WEIU. Okaw Vet Clinic located at 140 West Sales Street in downtown Tuscola. More information available at okawvetclinic.com.
Dave's Decorating Center is a proud supporter of the Paw Report on WEIU. Dave's Decorating Center features the Mohawk Smart Strand Silk Forever Clean Carpet. Dave's Decorating Center, authorized Mohawk Color Center in Charleston.